and welcome to this very special event. This is actually the April meeting of the Eanes History Group. Boring group of people. We actually think we're pretty fun. And we meet every month on the second Monday, and we do something that helps us to either learn, share, or celebrate the history of this very unique area. And we do have fun with that because everybody has something to add to the story. If you want to know what we are up to, give me your email. A lot of you are on my email list, or just if you RSVP to me, just pop me an email and say, please add me, and I'll be sure to include you in our monthly email of things historic around the Eanes area. Usually, we are meeting at the West Bank Library. But today we clearly aren't because we have such a special event. Not only are we able to meet in this incredibly historic space, but also enjoy this absolutely wonderful meal. And this special treat is all because of the generosity of Skeeter Miller and his team here at County Line on the Hill. Thank you so much, Skeeter, for this wonderful opportunity for this Westlake crowd to get together. This is amazing. We have employees, we have customers, we have fans of the County Line, and they're all gathered here to hear this wonderful story. So I'm going to get out of the way and toss it to Rex Hoover, a kid who grew up down the hill and across BK Road. So the neighborhood kid is going to moderate for us today.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm Rex Hoover, the neighborhood kid. My mom still lives 3/10 of a mile right over across the valley there. And my mom, raise your hand. We'll be here at the County Line celebrating her 90th birthday in 2 weeks. So I graduated Westlake class of 1981, known as America's class, and we've got 6 people out of our 200 that are here today, or their parents. So very good showing from our class. Obviously, the barbecue in the room, everything is fantastic. But I also wanted to thank Skeeter and Vanessa, Scott Z, and Taylor for helping us put together all this historical material. We're so excited to get it recorded on our permanent collection and keep it forever. It's just so generous for everything that y'all have done. The County Line is such an iconic touchstone for all of us. And this is such a great gathering of old Westlake. Some of the great families from the 70s that are represented here, I can't even believe all these names: Depews, Hoovers, McCulloughs, Schulers, Newtons, Bloomquist, James, Butler, Zigner, May, Maynard, Voorhees, and so many others. I don't know when we've had a gathering like this. I wish my kids were here because they're convinced that I'm the oldest living Westlake alumni. I always tell them I just look like them. But we've got a great presentation today of cedar choppers, moonshiners, rock cutters, gamblers, and outlaws who evidently shot each other every chance that they got. And then we transition to a barbecue empire, celebrities, politicians, and of course, some Westlake football stories. The County Line not only has the best barbecue, they've got the best public display of history, which is so important to all of us. And we hope that all of you will take a chance to take the opportunity to look around at some of the great photographs and memorabilia. And we're going to highlight some of that in the presentation here. And it's the best view. It's the oldest building, the rock cottages that Emmett built in 1930 that are 96 years old. There's 4 of them still here on the property that are the oldest, at least, commercial buildings still in existence in Westlake. And there's only a few buildings probably older than that totally in the district. And for me, 2 things at night always strike me. One, I love the running pigs on the neon sign that says it's barbecue. I love that at night. And then when you go around the curve, you can barely see the twinkling Christmas lights up on the deck. And every time I drive by, I think, gosh, I wish I was up there. And You know, when you drive up this green tunnel, this driveway, it is a time machine. When you get here, you don't know if it's 1975 or whether it is 2026 because it looks and feels so similar. You really can't see even Dimensionals building to the east. And I'm always struck every time I come up here that, man, this feels like it's just back in time. And I don't know of anywhere other than maybe the Depews Westlake Beach that still has that feel of just timelessness up here. So real quick, we're going to start the story in 1930 when Emmett Shelton bought this property and built the first structure up here. I want to give a quick context to 1930. The 1930 census for Travis County had, amazingly, 77,777 people. So all sevens. But of that, 53,210 lived within the city limits of Austin. So that meant there were 24,000 people that lived all in the rest of Travis County outside of Austin. And that included, Leander and South Austin and Brown Rock, all of these areas only had 24,000. So you can see how few people lived out here or anywhere in the whole Travis County area. And specifically in Westlake and Eanes in 1930, there was no power. It was one of the last areas in the country to not have power. And Jeffrey's going to talk a little bit about how Emmett got around the fact that there was no power. And not only was Bee Caves Road not paved in 1930, it wasn't even named, and there were no addresses. The original, you'll see some of the original pieces and news about the Moosehead Lodge opening just describe it. The directions are go out on Barton Road 8 miles. That was it. That was the whole. And then one of the Cedar Crest says go out on Barton Springs. So, even in the mid-30s, it still was not called Bee Caves Road. And Eanes Elementary was still in their one-room wood frame schoolhouse built in 1896. But about that same time, across the river, a young man named Emmett Shelton in 1917 became the youngest Eagle Scout in America. He graduated from Austin High in 1921, and he was always loyal forever. In 1925, he graduated from the Southwest Texas Teachers College in San Marcos, where he played on the football, basketball, and track teams. So he played on 12 teams and earned 10 varsity letters. He is a member of the Texas State University Athletic Hall of Fame and a distinguished citizen of the school. And in 1928, he graduated from UT Law. And in 1930, he came out to Westlake and bought his first piece of property and started representing the very violent Cedar Choppers. And now I'm going to turn it over to his stepson, Jeffrey Dochin, who not only learned and lived a lot of Emmett's stories, but he also learned his real estate business. It's still active here in Westlake Hills. Jeffrey is Westlake class of 1971. He is a leader in the Eanes History Group and the Austin History Group. And no one knows more history than Jeffrey Dochin. So I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Jeffrey Dochin.
Thank you, Rex. And thank you, Skeeter Miller and the County Line team for hosting our storytelling today. I don't know if y'all looked out this window, but this place just has such a beautiful view of our hill country. And also thank you, Ellen Balthazar, for leading us in disseminating our rich Eanes area history. I hope all of us keep taking turns telling these stories about our area. My story today is based upon Emmett Shelton's oral histories, newspaper research, other stories, and best of all, hearsay. But I think this is one of the most accurate versions heretofore presented about this property. When I first met Emmett, I was 9 years old. That was in 1962. I had just returned from spending the summer with my father, David Dochin. And when I returned to Austin, my mother, Joyce, and Emmett had married. Suddenly, I had to move from in town out to the country, a country called Westlake. And I was living in the house of this man I'd only met just a few times. And I really wasn't sure I quite liked this new situation. So I informed Emmett. I said, "You're not my daddy." And Emmett said to me, "No, I cannot be your daddy, but I can be your friend." Well, that pretty much melted my heart, and we became friends really bonded for our lifetimes. And one of the first things I learned about my new friend, Emmett, was that he told a lot of stories. Stories about murderers, corrupt sheriffs, alcoholic judges, famous Central Texas lawmen, bootleggers, stories about new cemeteries that were started with wooden caskets filled with sticks and stones instead of bones. A fire department that was started with a fire truck that didn't run. Starting a new city, overcoming the maximum allowed age limit to join the Marines to fight World War II. Stories about a hill country people called cedar choppers. These stories were amazing, but I found them really hard to believe that they were true. These sort of stories only happened in TV episodes like Bonanza, Perry Mason, or Gunsmoke, which in 1962 I was very familiar with. But I knew that the TV stories were just fictional stories that were made up for the entertainment of the audiences. So a skepticism arose in my mind, and I couldn't help but ask Emmett, are these stories true? To which he answered, yes, Jeffrey, some of these stories are true. Anyway, may I tell you one of Emmett's stories today?
Look, before we get off this slide, I want you to look at Emmett Shelton, 1926, and look at how muscular and how built that guy is in a time when people did not lift weights or anything. So it's obvious he was a very good physical specimen and a real stud athlete.
So one of the stories he told me was about this property we know today as a County Line restaurant on the hill. And Emmett's part of the story begins on March 27th, 1930, when Emmett purchased 140 acres out of the old John Sweezy survey number 508. He bought it from Dan and Agnes McNamara for $2,000. He paid $500 down, and the McNamaras carried a note for the remaining $1,500. And this 140 acres was Emmett's first purchase of land in the Westlake area. So this hilltop ridge stretched from Redbud Trail on the east end of the 140 acres all the way over to this location of the County Line restaurant. And Emmett was 25 years old at that time.
And real quick, Jeffrey, buying 2,000 acres or 140 acres for $2,000 is $14.28 per acre. Or for us commercial guys, it is 0.0003 per square foot. And now it's the corner of Westlake and 360 and Redbud Trail. And don't we all wish we had a couple of those acres?
So, and that was a lot of money back then. So initially, Emmett engaged Lytton Pierce and his 12-year-old son, Edward Pierce, to do the rock work on 7 or 8 cabins at the site. Lytton was a patriarch of a prominent cedar chopper clan whose home and outhouse still exist and can be viewed over on Rocky River Road. I don't know if, I bet about half of us have seen that there, but it's still there. Between Lytton and his wife, Edna Patterson Pierce, they had 12 children. You've heard of Patterson Lane and Patterson Elementary. Well, it's the same clan, the Pattersons. Most of those old cabins that Emmett had Lytton construct still exist and are located over on the other side of the parking lot here. And you should check out the craftsmanship of vintage cedar chopper rock work. Emmett promoted the cabins for enjoyment by inner city Austin folks to have a weekend getaway to the country where they could spend the nights under a sky void of city light pollution. And the slogan he used in his advertising was, "A full moon is guaranteed once a month." Emmett had become the youngest Eagle Scout in North America around 1917. So he supported the Austin Boy Scout troops on sponsoring hiking, camping, and other scout activities, at this site. At the same time, Emmett built the Moosehead Lodge. He said, quote, "I strained my finances to build a building where the County Line Cafe is now located on the point of a hill looking west off of Bee Cave Road in the west part of Westlake Hills." He had heard that the state highway department was cutting down pine trees and burning them. This was to widen the highway going through Bastrop to Houston. He had a friend at the highway department who said that he could have all the logs that Emmett could haul on. So Emmett got Mr. Plumley, who was in the bootlegging business, as well as the trucking business, to haul enough logs to build a 30 by 20 foot building. He made a deal with the Mafreyes brothers to put down a red concrete floor. It was the first red tinted cement floor of its kind in Austin. And you can see this floor right in this next room. You may have noticed the Mafreyes name stamped on many of downtown Austin sidewalks, and that's because they poured most of Austin's downtown sidewalks. The new lodge used carbide lights for the restaurant because they did not have any electricity. Emmett got one of his friends, C.C. Hill, to be his partner to cook and to sell the steaks. They couldn't sell liquor because it was during Prohibition, but they figured that people would really flock out to a place like this to have a nice steak dinner. So they got it set up in the summer of 1930. Emmett put a large moose head that his father had given him over the fireplace, which had been in the Moose Club when it went broke in downtown Austin. Emmett hung an interesting painting of two moose fighting behind the bar. A large framed mirror was what the artist used as his canvas to paint the fighting moose upon. Emmett said they had a beautiful place. Well, yeah, if you like moose. Every Monday morning, CC would buy a bunch of T-bone steaks and bread. On Friday evening, Emmett's wife, Elba May, and him would go up and see how well they were doing in the business. People, unfortunately, wouldn't eat any supper, though. The potential clientele would come up here to drink their own bootleg whiskey and just hang out in the parking lot. Bootleg whiskey, which had probably been brewed in many whiskey stills scattered, throughout the surrounding hills here. And they only used the parking area just to drink that moonshine whiskey. So the bootleggers would probably make more money selling moonshine whiskey than Emmett was by selling steaks.
Sounds like a Westlake football game today.
So each Sunday evening, they had about as many steaks as what they started with on Monday morning. So they would take the steaks home at the end of the week and eat as many of them as they could. But finally, they had to close the cafe. At least it wasn't losing too much money. Shortly thereafter, no one was in attendance at the Moosehead Lodge. That is when mysteriously the place burned down. This is around the late part of 31 or the early part of 1932. Only the painted mirror over the bar with the two moose fighting was saved from the ruins.
Still is in the bar, right?
Emmett got a telephone call from a local insurance man, a QC Taylor, who told Emmett that there was an insurance policy for $1,500 on the building. And Emmett said to himself, insurance policy? I don't have an insurance policy on the Moosehead Lodge. Well, it turned out that his Uncle Horace Shelton had taken out the insurance policy, Emmett's beloved Uncle Horace. But Uncle Horace didn't have title to the building at all and had no financial interest in it. Emmett was confronted with the situation that his uncle had insured this building in his uncle's name and it had burned down. Uncle Horace made a claim to the insurance company without Emmett's knowing it, but the insurance company wouldn't pay the proceeds to Horace. Emmett said, my Uncle Horace and I had a lawsuit over it in October of 1932. I won it, and I got the insurance proceeds, though I lost the love for my uncle. So who do y'all think set fire to the lodge? So Emmett then rehabilitated the structure, and he sold it to a fellow named Mervyn Ash, who probably got an honor carry note from Emmett. Ash developed it into a gambling hall and named his masterpiece the Cedar Crest Lodge, which this existing stone structure now houses us. This was mid-1933. Mervyn Ash was a well-known gambler here in Austin, and people called him the king of gamblers. And he, excuse me, and he was just that. You see, he sort of kept the other gamblers in Austin in line, at least to the point of not getting law enforcement complained to very much. Mervyn sort of helped the other gamblers keep out of too much trouble. So he was well known in Austin and well respected. So the Cedar Crest Lodge opened about a year before Prohibition was repealed. So Mervyn Ash got his illicit liquor shipped in from New Orleans. You see, Prohibition began in 1918 and ended in December of 1933. But even after Prohibition had ended, localities still had to vote as to whether to allow alcohol to be served. But even after alcohol was once again legalized and local entities voted to approve it, individual businesses still had to get a liquor license. And after so many years of selling bootleg liquor, most bars just ignored the need to get a license. Cedar Crest was one of those businesses selling alcohol without a license, even as late as December 1934. Anyway, at the Cedar Crest Lodge, Emmett's financial interest was to represent Mervyn Ash as his attorney and as his consultant. And that was for 10% of the net profits, if any, from the gambling house business. And it cost Mervyn Ash $3,000 to open the Cedar Crest Lodge. It was obvious that Mervyn wanted to attract the finer, well-heeled clientele from town. So Emmett asked Mervyn how was he going to keep the local hillbillies from coming to the club and frightening the high-paying guest off. And Mervyn said, it's simple. We'll just put white tablecloths on the tables. So the king of gamblers anticipated that his customers would come, try their luck, then lose their money at the tables and games. And the Cedar Crest Lodge was, as it opened, was revered as a nice club, and it became a very popular place. Again, this is in the early 30s. Ash even hired an ex-con to stand out on the point of the hill to watch for the sheriff. If the sheriff was sighted, the ex-con would warn everybody so they could escape into the cedar breaks surrounding the club. Ash's paranoia that his lodge might get set afire, like its predecessor structure, got the best of him. He therefore hired the owner of a little pavilion across the highway from the Cedar Crest, a fellow named Ernst Thurman, to be the night watchman so no cedar choppers would burn the place down. And this is key here. You have to understand who Ernst Thurman was. He was such a bad man that all the other cedar choppers were afraid of him. He was good with a knife. They called him Crazy Ernst Thurman. And he was with a cedar chopper as well as a bootlegger. In fact, that's what he sold across the street here was moonshine whiskey. He always carried a gun and a knife, and he shot or knifed 5 people before getting killed in a shootout with his father-in-law down the road here, BK Road and Knollwood Drive. And this is in 1936. So he was probably a pretty good night watchman because no one dared cross his path. Anyway, Emmett was there the first night that the club opened. He said it was a beautiful club. He said it looked just like Las Vegas, even though Emmett had never been to Las Vegas. He said everything was free food, free whiskey. This was in the hope that the free booze would result in more gambling. The finest of food was served. And just so that you know, personally, me and Rex wish we'd been there.
Mom, that's not true.
That first night, Cedar Crest was just loaded with people. All of Austin's bigwigs were there. There were dice tables, a roulette wheel, cards, and a game of chance called Chuck-a-Luck. Anyone know what Chuck-a-Luck is? Doesn't matter. But regrettably, the Cedar Crest did not make money that first night. People were eating the free food and drinking the free booze, but not much gambling was going on. And no one left until the booze was all drunk up. However, about a month later, Mervyn Ash, the gambler, phoned up Emma and said, Emma, I think we got our nut covered. Said, Theo Davis was here last night gambling. Said, Theo got in his cups and lost big time. Said, Theo Davis had to write a check for $13,000 to cover his losses. Said, and you know, Emma, Theo is good for it. You see, Theo was a prominent Austin businessman. He was a banker and he was a civic leader. In fact, Theo had just been appointed to head up the Travis County Grand Jury. Emma told Mervyn, I think that's a debt you may have trouble a difficult time collecting, and sure enough, Theo Davis convinced Mervyn to settle the debt for about half. And Mervyn knew he should settle since Theo was heading up the grand jury. I'm surprised Mervyn Ash got anything out of Theo. Anyway, the Cedar Crest Speakeasy had a difficult time turning a profit because there weren't but about 3 or 4 avid gamblers in Austin at the time. Anyway, eventually, around 1936, Mervyn had to shut the Cedar Crest down, and Emmett bought it back from him in 36 for $10 and perhaps some forgiveness of debt. Emmett then sold the Cedar Crest to Theo Myers and Rudolph Miller, and they were eager to try some new ventures. They leased it out to a parade of private operators over the years. And so for years, the Cedar Crest was used for all kinds of event venues, up through the early 1960s. It was used as a dance hall and honky tonk. It was used by local groups like the Lions Club, the Texas A&M Club, the Bachelor Club of Austin, and most other similar groups in Austin. It was used for costume parties, wedding receptions, fraternity parties, you name it. Oh, this is my favorite part. Its phone number was Greenwood 2, 1902. Only a few of y'all are chuckling at that, so I get it. During this period, some wild things happened at the Cedar Crest Lodge. It became the scene of some almost unthinkable happenings. At a wedding, a member of the bridal party pulled a gun and shot one of the guests. I'm betting this is not quite what the bride envisioned when she was planning her wedding. And I'm especially curious to see the wedding album pictures, aren't you? Another time, a college student got mad at his girlfriend, and then he drove away in a huff. But instead of using the driveway, he drove off the ridge and he got killed. Around 1941, Myers and Miller leased the Cedar Crest to a Fred Kipper. Kipper was a one-armed man who always kept a pistol tucked in his belt. And he ran the Cedar Crest, and it was a very popular honky-tonk. Frank Irwin, who served as chairman of the UT Board of Regents, once told of nights when he and his friends would close down the place and Kipper would ask them for a ride back into town. Irwin said that as they were driving, the one-armed Kipper, armed with his pistol, would hang out the window, shooting all the mailboxes as they drove down Bee Cave Road. Anyone here find a bullet hole in their mailbox? Was it one of Frank Irwin's passengers? Maybe your mailbox could have some historic value.
And this is Fred Kipper's marketing piece that Scott Z gave to me. And it says on the front, how we lose our customers. And on the inside with Cedar Chopper subtlety, it says. So Scott, you can still use that.
It's the only way the county line's going to lose me as a customer. I hope it's a long time. So stag parties were also popular among Kipper's customers. And for many years, the annual Austin JC stag party was held at the Cedar Crest. One night, a member's wife was delivering an urgent message to her husband at that party, and she caught a glimpse of some naked women dancing on the tabletops. Personally, me and Rex wish we'd been there.
Skater.
The Cedar Crest was extremely popular among boisterous UT students and the entertainment-deprived World War II veterans. So boisterous that customers got drunk and got in fights. In August of 1958, one fella, Albert Vodchtik, secretly followed his ex-wife, LaDonna, to the Cedar Crest. She happened to be the foster daughter of Fred Kipper, the proprietor. The jealous Vodchtik walked in and shot her twice with his .22 caliber pistol as she sat at a table. Later, he claimed that he didn't remember shooting her due, he said, to the severe beating until he was unconscious that was administered from the Cedar Crest patrons that night. Well, of course, the fellow that runs the joint, that was his daughter anyway, she survived, but he went to jail for 3 years. The Cedar Crest Lodge continued as a dance hall through the early part of the 60s. Then in 1966, things seemingly turned better. It was bought with money raised from 7 Austin Episcopal churches and used as a teenage youth center for dances. And it was called The Same Place. And this was a very successful and happy venture until there was a knifing when a bunch of teenage thugs invaded the youth dance one night. So The Same Place was short-lived too. Then in 67 or 68, Gail Cox of Houston bought it. She was the wife of a fella named Joyce Cox, a successful timber and oil attorney from Houston. Gail Cox developed the property as a getaway for herself. She loved the woods and the old structures and spent many a night in one of the old cabins on the property when she was here in Austin. Her son, Jim Cox, was the director of Middle Earth, which was a drug treatment center near the UT campus. He was living in the old Cedar Crest Lodge building with Harriet Wardlaw. How many of y'all recognize that name, Harriet Wardlaw? Okay, so, just more history. At any rate, I heard that this was kind of the hippie era for Cedar Crest. The structure became available in 1975 and opened as a County Line restaurant. That is when Bruce Walcott, Skeeter Miller, and other partners leased the building from Gail Cox, buying it 6 years later. So Skeeter will pick up this story in just a minute. but as I finish, I want to ask you something. You remember that old painting on the mirror of the 2 moose fighting? It had survived the fire of the Moosehead Lodge back in 1932, and it had hung in our home for many years. So in 1975, Emmett donated it to the County Line restaurant. And guess what? It still famously hangs on the wall here at the restaurant over in the next room. How about that? So after hearing me tell all these unthinkable happenings, I just want to ask, did anyone, I hope that no one brought a gun to today's lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That was fantastic and gets us up to 1975. And we had so much material. And when we really started digging into Ernest Thurman, who got killed, he is a whole presentation that we're going to do on ourselves. So we did put in a little bit of slide here, a couple slides about his death, how it was reported in the Austin paper in a very sensational way. And it's so funny because the paper talks about the hill country people as kind of these crazed people, which I guess they really were. And then one of the headlines said AMRS rather than arms. So the typesetting was not great. Ernest and the Pierces and the Tuckers and a whole bunch of the Cedar Chopper families are buried right behind Rudy's 360 and Tucker Cemetery. And this is Ernest Thurman's headstone. And I just wanted to point out how proud he was of being a Cedar Chopper, that he has a Cedar Chopper axe, double-handed or double-sided, which is very, and this whole image of the cedar, the axe, the cross, and the crescent moon, I think are just fantastic. And I don't want to put the pressure on Skeeter, but he was really an ex-employee, had some bad traits, but I really think he deserves a drink named in his honor. Got it. Ernest Ray, there we go, Crazy Ernest. So now we're up to 1975. Travis County, Austin, and Westlake are obviously growing. Hill Country and Wild Basin opened in 1975. Big Caves Road is now paved. It's up to 2 lanes, no lights, all the way out to 71, but it did have an address at that point. So we're getting there. But there's still no 360. There's no Pennybacker Bridge, and the Mopac Bridge had just opened. So the isolation is starting to, with the Mopac Bridge, starting to decline a little bit. And really, it was early 80s when the bridge opened across Lake Austin on 360 that it really opened up the area for development. Westlake High School was 6 years old And like I said, just opened the first middle school in 1975. And that was when Skeeter Miller and some young friends had a big dream and a crazy idea for Emmett's old deserted building. And I asked our host, Skeeter Miller, for a bio so I could do a proper introduction for him. And there's no time to even start. But just imagine every award and every honor that you would get in 50 years as a restaurateur of excellence. One of the big ones was I think he's the past chairman of the board of the Texas Restaurant Association for the entire state. And we're going to get into how much they've expanded and the volume and everything that they do. And he's going to talk about, we have so many old employees here that's just fantastic. And Skeeter, I'm going to ask two things that you cover. One, how your name came about, and two, how y'all came up with the concept of barbecue with sit-down service, linens, and a full bar, because Lambert's does it downtown, but it's still very rare. And this concept to have survived for 50 years and flourished into 6 locations, I would love to understand how y'all kind of came up with that, because that's certainly not the way that barbecue is done very often. So I'm now turn it over to Skeeter Miller.
I just want to say we do it a hell of a lot better than Lambert's. I'm just going to let you know that. So thank you all so much for being here. 50 years is pretty amazing in our industry. And, if there's some county liners here, that's what they said, that worked here from the beginning. So could they stand up, please? Grant, I think you have an old uniform.
Like I said, he asked me to bring an original hat from like '89, I think. And I have the original denim apron back probably 87, 89.
I think it shrunk a little bit.
That's amazing, because I can barely get my employees today to come in the right hand. So I appreciate it.
We'll say there was a debacle we went through trying to decide between the classic denim and somebody, hired some corporate consultant to make us wear khaki pants and a green shirt. That lasted about an entire year.
That's what we get for hiring a consultant. So starting and this is so great that y'all are here. Our average employee tenure is 37 years. And so, which is amazing. And the funny thing is that in the beginning, there were people that came and they had their children crawling around underneath the table. And the next thing you know, I'm hiring their children that were crawling under the table. And they were 16. Okay, and then the next thing you know, their children are coming to work for us. And so that's the culture that we have, which is amazing. And how you stay around for 50 years is because of the community, because of your employees. So give a hand to my employees for sure. So I'm always you want me Skeeter? He wants to know about Skeeter. Okay, well, so my dad played pro football in the NFL back in the 50s for the Green Bay Packers, Philadelphia Eagles, and the Cleveland Browns. Okay, and so they don't make what they make today. Okay, he got $500 a game, and he signed when he was drafted for $9,000. But so I was in Philadelphia. My mom was pregnant. She had me there in Philadelphia. And so, of course, we didn't have a lot of money. Dad was on the road playing, making $500 a game. So I went back to the farm in Belleville with my grandparents and my mother. And I got chewed up by mosquitoes. I was allergic to them. And my grandfather called me Skeeter. And that's my story. And I'm thinking too. So, that's how I got my name. It kind of goes with barbecue, don't you think? I mean, yeah. So anyway, it's always nice when they mention that I was a founder. I actually was not a founder. Okay, I grew up in Dallas with the Goss brothers, Rick, Rocky, Randy. I came to know Bruce when I came to Austin, but I grew up with the Goss brothers in Austin. And I went up to Arkansas, played baseball at the University of Arkansas, but I always wanted to come home to Texas. And so, and my friends were here. And so I went and worked in the oil fields for a little while as a roughneck to earn enough money to come. And that's when these guys, a handful of them, and Bruce, were going to open a restaurant called the County Line. And I needed a job. And Bruce used to live right across, him and his brother John and their family lived right across the street from the County Line. And Doris, who is one of the originators of the library, Doris Walcott, she told Bruce and John, don't you ever go up to that place. There's a bunch of shenanigans going on. So what did they do? They went straight up there, right? So that's how Bruce knew about the property and all of the kipper and the one-armed guy and the gun shooting off when the cops were coming. And we have a stagecoach stop on the back of the property where, the stagecoach was robbed one day and the gold is buried on the property and UT comes out and looks for it. So if you guys find it, could you just please cut me in? I just would like. So Bruce and them decided that's what they wanted to do, but they wanted to build a barbecue restaurant that actually had table service and had a real napkin and silverware, and there wasn't some old dirty three-legged dog laying out front. They wanted to have a really nice place, and they wanted a bar so you could get something to drink, and it was in a scenic setting. And so I needed a job, so I was the first dishwasher here. And Bruce, I was and I was good. Bruce was actually, he was a bartender. He was bartending. Rick was cooking in the kitchen. And then there was a whole group of us that, just were all friends. And so there was other investors that if they had a couple of nickels to put together, they were then a partner in the business. One of the guys, his name was Harry Bell. He was a black man that said he knew how to cook barbecue. He didn't even know what a brisket was. Okay. So anyway, we go down there, we try to figure out a brisket. And we're trying to build the thing ourselves. Went to the bank, got a $65,000 loan along with the money that we had to build this place. This was the original kitchen that you're in right here. Yeah, it was put together with baling wire and extension cords. I can tell you that right now. And so anyway, we're opening night, friends and family. You saw the original invitation, and we realized we didn't have a menu. There was no menu. Now that's really planning, right? And so all we knew was we had a culture we didn't want any more killing and stabbing. We just wanted to make sure we killed a lot of cattle. That's what we needed. So anyway, Rocky, who was an artist, he was one of the brothers. He went down to Rylander's grocery store and grabbed these Big Chief tablets. And he came back. And, there was no such thing as a copy machine or anything like that back then. And so we opened up the menus and he drew this out. And we took colored markers and we had to all sit down and color the menus. And so I colored outside the line, so I didn't have to do that anymore. So this was our menu. Can you imagine? I mean, this actually, there's the one out there. This is an older model. Okay. But the original was $3.75 for a barbecue platter. The all you could eat was $4.95. Now, I don't know who was doing the math, but it wasn't good math. Okay. So anyway, so we got it all done and it was a Big Chief tablet. And that was kind of our cool brand, and so people would come in at a Big Chief tablet. The look was, 1930s. We had Benny Goodman music playing, the Andrews Sisters. We had Chesterfield ads on the wall. And I mean, it was just a really cool vibe. But we were doing 10 and 11 dinners a day. We weren't making any money. We were a destination restaurant. We were way outside of town. Bruce and Rick slept at the restaurant. When you walk in that front door, you see those church pews. They were sleeping on those church pews every day when I came to work. And
there they are. And real quick, the line has got so many great historical photographs, and this picture hangs in the foyer or entry there. And most people don't even know that that's Ellen Balthazar's first husband. So. Little known fact. She was a child bride. So anyway, that pews, they were always sleeping. They were always tired.
And at one point, we were really struggling for money. So Bruce went out on Bee Caves Road, and that's when you got a nickel for every glass Coke bottle you went and turned in. And he was out there collecting Coke bottles on Bee Caves to get enough money just to try to make the payroll. And then on top of that, Rick went out of town, and you remember Vegematic? We chopped our own coleslaw. Well, Bruce bought a Vegematic for $15, and they got in a huge fight over spending that money to make the coleslaw. Thank goodness Texas Monthly came along and wrote an article about this restaurant outside of Austin, and we went from 10 to 15 dinners a day to 700 to 800 dinners a day.
Wow.
We needed it. And so, but we were, we just were all friends. We all worked really hard. It was so busy every day. And I can remember when I was washing dishes and doing stuff, Rick, there was a fire this was where the barbecue pit was right here. And whoever built it clearly wasn't the Mafrias brothers. Okay. So the pit was just a rock pit. They put the briskets on there. The fire was at the end. The grease went on the ground, and then it caught on fire. Okay. And so I remember this one night, and I come in, and Rick comes up to me and he says, "Get in here." He goes, "The briskets are on fire." So I go in there, and we open the top of it, and the flames are up. It's a Saturday night. We got people standing in the parking lot waiting to get in, and he grabs a fire extinguisher, and it's got baking soda in it. Everybody calm down. And he sprays all of the briskets and puts out the fire. And he looks over at me and he says, "Get over here and clean these up. We got to get open." And I was thinking, oh my God, these people are going to eat whatever's on these briskets. So I wash all of them off. I was bussing and dishing. You did both jobs. And all I could hear all night was these people saying, "This is the best damn brisket I've ever had." So anyway, so as time went on, we got better at it. Clearly we had to doing those numbers, and decided that we were going to go to El Paso. Bruce had gone to UTEP at college, and so he knew that was a city that we might do well in. And so he came to me and said, "Hey, well, why don't you come with us to El Paso? We're going to open this restaurant. Maybe you could be a manager." And so I went home, and I can remember sitting down and going, "Where the hell is El Paso?" I didn't even know where it was. So we go out there. The carpenter, my story is the carpenter that we had did all the work. We were everything was hand to mouth. We just did everything ourselves. And his son was the general manager. His name was John Hinks. And I came into work one day, and I'd worked every job, and I could see all these inefficiencies that we could do better if we were going to scale this business. I'll give you an example. Bruce one day comes up to me and he goes, "We got to do some inventory." And I said, "Okay." So he goes, get that box of briskets and come out here and put it on a scale. And I don't know if y'all have ever seen the scale that we used to have out front, but it was probably from the 1920s. It was one of those big porcelain scales with the big needle on it. And you put a nickel in it and got on it. It never said the same weight every time. So he says, "Put that brisket on there." So I put the brisket on there, put the nickel in, and I said, "Bruce, this thing doesn't work." He goes, "It works great here." I said, "Okay, well, let's take it off and put it back on there and see if it's the same weight." And it was completely different. And he goes, "Well, this damn thing doesn't work. We can't do inventory." I said, "Okay." So we're out at El Paso. I walk in the door, and John Hinks has got Donnie Ernest by the neck, and he's holding him up in the kitchen. And I go over and I grab John Hinks and throw him on the ground, and Bruce walks in. He goes, "What the hell is going on in here?" I said, "I don't know. I came in and John's choking Donnie, and I just stopped the fight." And so Bruce looks over at John Hinks and says, "You're fired." And he fires him. And then his son goes, "Well, if you're firing my dad, then I quit." And Bruce goes, "Well, give me the keys." So Bruce takes the keys from him and looks over at me, and he pitches them to me, and he says, "You can run this place." And I said, "Okay." And they left and went to Puerto Vallarta for 6 months. And so I got to change a lot of things that we did. And we had a bunch of great people, and we kind of had a formula and had policies and things that we did to be able to grow the business. So then we came back and did the lake. So all of our places that we did, we wanted it to be a unique location. And, we found as time went on that we built one on Westheimer and it just wasn't the same. People came and said, we love the food, but it's not on the hill. It's not on the lake. It's not on the side of a mountain in Albuquerque. It's not in El Paso in a rustic setting with a big wall around it. So, we learned a lot from that. And so, over the years, we've continued to grow. We've continued to keep our culture. One of the cool things I want to make sure that I tell you about the Big Chief tablet. So the Big Chief tablet, everybody wrote in the back, right? We had, Carol Burnett, Sammy Hagar, all these famous people. Walter Cronkite came. Everybody wrote something in the back of the menu. It was really cool. And then people started drawing dirty pictures. And then when Three Nuns came in, that don't work out. Okay. So I said, we got to take the pages out of the back. And so we had to take those things apart, pull the pages. By that time, there was a machine where we could do black and white copies. We still had to color the menus and we would staple them back together. And so I thought, this is ridiculous. So Hurlitz was the tablet company in Dallas, Texas that made those tablets. And so I called them and this German guy answers the phone. I could barely understand him. And I said, hey, listen, we use your tablets at our restaurant and I just want to buy the cover and the cardboard back. That's all I want. I want anything else. And he says, well, I'm glad you called because they just took the Berlin Wall down and all our family lives in East Germany and we're going home. So if you want them, we're locking the doors tomorrow and you can have them. So we got in a bunch of 24-foot trucks and drove to Dallas. And they loaded all those trucks up and they just gave them to us and they left and went back to Germany. Really cool story. So over the years, we've talked about community, we talked about everything else, but so many things are super important to us. The military, I don't know if you saw the sign out front, the Purple Heart veterans. We do a lot of charitable work, the community. We've been giving back for years. For the last 12 or 13 years, we have a program called Operation Vacation. So military family coming back from deployment, they just got to be with their family. I partner with the Hotel and Lodging Association. They put them up in a hotel. The car dealership gives them a car to drive for the weekend. They come here and they have their meal with their family at the county line. And so that's one of the cool things we've done for 12 years. And then the Purple Heart piece. The Purple Heart piece was as I was judging a chili cook-off at the Candlelight Ranch. It was a charitable event, and I met. I was like right on the edge of being drafted to go to the Vietnam War. So, and I was not. They stopped the draft, but the Vietnam War was always something that was big to me, not welcoming people home. And so, the guy that did the car show, I said, hey, he was a 2 Bronze Star winner for honor and bravery. And I said, I'd love to take you to lunch. I want to welcome you home and just thanks for everything you did for our country. And so he calls me, and it's Veterans Day and the Order of the Purple Heart Day. And he says, can I bring all the Purple Heart veterans to eat at your restaurant? I said, oh, absolutely. So Scott and his team made a giant banner. We had it out front with the Purple Heart on it and everything else. And they came and had lunch with us. They wanted to pay. I wouldn't let them pay. And they've been coming for the last 4 years, every month to this restaurant. And that's something that's how we got the sign out front. We're a big contributor to them. And so that part of it means a lot to us. We do a lot for education. We give back. So, and thank y'all as a community for everything that you do. I don't know. I hope I covered everything.
Yeah, I was going to go through some of the slides on some of the different details. So I wanted you to tell the story of the mayor's table.
Okay, so we're always coming up with a gimmick because I make potato salad for a living. So we decided that we wanted to have the mayor's table. So all of the past mayors, current, past, we had their pictures and we would put them on the wall, and that was the table. That was their table. And if they came, the way it worked is that the people that were sitting at the table had to.
They need dessert. We'll get it.
Okay.
They're coming around.
Do we have a mayor here?
No.
Do we have a mayor here? Okay, well, somebody can raise your hand. You can lie about it. We heard a lot of that earlier. And so, so anyway, the mayor comes in, and the people sitting at the table, I don't care if they're in the middle of their meal. I don't care what's going on. They got to get up. And we're going to pay for their dinner somewhere else. And the mayor gets to sit down. And so it's so funny. We've had this there, and you know, some mayors that they don't like, people put napkins over their face. They draw mustaches on them, maybe black out a tooth. I went to it. We luckily enough, when Mayor Leffingwell, every new mayor has a lunch when he's leaving office for all the living mayors that are still there. So he asked Skeeter, will the county line serve the mayors? And so I said yes. And so it was an honor to do it. And Ron Mullins comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something." And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "I don't like that picture. I look way too old in it." I said, "What? Well, would you just go get a younger picture? I'll be happy to put it up." So that's what's up. We got a younger picture of it. So a lot of fun things. Fun story about Carol Burnett. I have to tell you this. So she came in at the county line on the lake years ago. You know, you try, when somebody's famous in the house, you try not to, you know, you want to let them enjoy their meal. Well, the customers just weren't going to let her do it. She's super famous and super sweet. So she just got up and went to the hostess stand and said, "I'm just going to seat tables." And so we're like, you know, hell, it was the best price, right? So we said, okay, so she's seating tables and everybody's having a great time. It's Carol Burnett. Time goes on, years and years go by. And she was here for South by Southwest. And it must have been 30 years later speaking here. And so we got a call, because we do a lot of stuff with the hotels, to where if you've got a VIP guest, you just call us. We'll make sure they're put in a private area or whatever we need to do. They said, "We got a VIP guest. Just put them off at a table where they won't be bothered." I said, "Okay." So it's Carol Burnett. So she comes in and we put her in the booth. When we had those booths, we put her over there. And so this manager looks at the little waitress and says, "Now listen, you just go out there and wait on her, just like she's just everybody. Don't bug her." She goes, "Oh, but you don't understand. Oh, my mother and I watched all of her shows. She's just amazing." You can already tell this isn't going to go right. So she goes out to the table. She's trying to take the order, and she says, "I just can't help it. I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I just have to tell you, my mother and I, blah, 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 blah," goes on and on. And Carol Burnett says, "Here, do you have your cell phone?" So she says, "Yes." She says, "Go get it. We're going to go call your mother." So she called her mom. So we get a lot of incredible guests that there's a lot of great stories in over 50 years. And hopefully we've got a bunch more years to go because of the way you all support us. So if you get a chance to look at all the memorabilia, this is just stuff we've collected over the years, a lot of fun stuff. That one back there with Mickey Mantle on it. He came to the Corpus Christi restaurant when we had that, and he was on the cover of Life magazine, and he never saved that magazine. And so we had old Life magazines around the restaurant. And he said, so my brother was running the Corpus store, and he said, "Hey, Mickey Mantle's here, and he wants to know if he can buy the Life magazine." And I go, "No, I mean, Mickey Mantle buy the Life magazine? Hell, we probably didn't even pay for it." So I said, but the deal is that I want a color copy I want to get a copy of the cover, and he has to sign something for us. And so Mickey Mantle was gracious to do that. We got that back there. That's the original signature, but that's not the real cover. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. I guess
let me talk about a couple of things.
I want to talk real quickly on a couple of slides that I made Skeeter put in. One of the things that touches people so much about this restaurant is the sense of history and all the plaques for their regulars and all of the stuff that ties to the history of this place. And see right here in the bar, there's a sign that says Building 3. So Dimensional Funding, which is one of the, probably the biggest company here in Westlake and, phenomenal financial services company, that they have those two buildings and they call them Building 1 and Building 2. And so many of the Dimensional Fund people like to come down here and after work that they started calling the bar Building 3. So Skeeter, genius that he is, he puts up a sign called Building 3. So I sent this slide to my buddy Dave Butler, who runs Dimensional Funding, great guy. And he just laughed and he said unfortunately he couldn't make it to the lunch, but he wanted to see it, online. But he said that he heard all of his employees always talking about Building 3. So he's in on the joke. And he said it's actually one of their biggest recruiting tools to get people to come to work. So let's hear it for Building 3. And then this is my personal slide. This is about the Westlake Dads football lunch. Every Friday of game day forever, Westlake, the dads on the football team, all get together and have lunch. And Drew Brees won in 1996, and then we had a long time, 23 years before we won again. Went to state a bunch of times and just lost in very disappointing fashion. And so my son was playing on 2019, the year that they broke that streak and won the state championship. And the dad's lunch was over on the other side of the river at Hula Hut. That wasn't going to work. So Henry Smoger, the dad who was in charge of it, who lives about a quarter mile away on St. Stephen's School Road, he moved it back to the county line in 2019. And so we had every lunch here, went 15-1, one state. And the last luncheon of the year, the Friday before we went to state, we had too many people, or the weather was bad. And so we moved into the corral. What you see us inside here where you picked up your barbecue. And Coach Todd Dodge brought the entire team. We didn't even know it. He brought the whole team and was inside the main dining room. So the whole thing was magical, but all of us being here with our boys, county line was really, really special. And the lunch before, we had left a 50% tip for Karma. We said, we got to get over the hump, man. We got to get to state. So we left the 50% tip and we went to Waco and we won 63-3. So we said that works pretty good. So for Christmas and for Sports Karma, we left 100% tip at the county line for that luncheon. And then the next day we won state for the first time in 23 years. So that was good. But
Y'all just leave your money on the table.
that started a pretty good run for Westlake football. In the next 6 years, Westlake would play in 4 title games, win 3 straight state championships, win a record 54 games in a row, and go 92-4 in those 6 years. And I blame Skeeter. So there you go. Give it up. And then this is my favorite slide. The old bar setting with the ashtrays on every table, just to show how much things have changed. So these are just some kind of before and after to show you, how different venues have changed over the years. As you can see, it's really gotten much more rustic. And Skeeter now has added the Vista Room where we've had so many great gatherings, Stagecoach Stop, which is the newest. And Skeeter, why don't you go over a little bit of these factoids here?
Okay, well, first off, we go through about 5 million pounds of beef a year. So eat a lot, okay? We need it. And so between the 6 stores, about 3 million ribs per year between beef and pork ribs, about 45,000 gallons of barbecue sauce, 140,000 gallons of iced tea. The beans are made daily, 80-gallon in an 80-gallon bean. We call it a bean pot. So your potatoes are cooked in that for your potato salad too, and mixed by hand. We wear gloves. And over 100,000 of the homemade bread per year equates to 1 million pounds of flour per year, easily over 5 million pounds of beef a year. I remember just a funny story about Bruce. He came in to me one day and he goes, Skeeter, we got to start giving away that homemade bread. So we had house bread and we had homemade bread. And I said, well, Bruce, I mean, it's a lot of labor into that bread. I don't think that's a good idea. People are actually paying for it and they really like it. They don't like the house bread. He goes, nope, gotta give it away. I said, okay. So I went home, did all the numbers. I came back the next day and I said, Bruce, I said, if we give away this homemade bread, it's going to knock about $500,000 off the bottom line. He goes, well, who the hell came up with that idea?
We're going to go to question and answer here in a minute. And I want to say one thing about the homemade bread. When the restaurant first opened, we're living right down here, all of we were in fifth, sixth grade, all the older siblings of everybody worked. They were some of the original waiters and waitresses and dishwashers. And the homemade bread was made by Miss Cliff, one of the neighbors down the street. And then Miss Pokenhorn made the beans. And Miss Pokenhorn evidently was really good at making the beans, because when the Doziers opened Taco Bell later on, Trey Dolezal back here, raise your hand, top 50 football player all time, Westlake High School. Trey, Miss Pokenhorn would actually make the beans even for Taco Bell. So she was very, very accomplished in making the beans.
Yeah, she's a long time friend of mine. Watch her hand move, go through those seeds to get the rocks up.
Oh, yeah, yes. Miss Mayer's talking about, she was world renowned for being able to pick the rocks out of the beans because it was doing large amounts. Yeah, that was the neighborhood lore, was Miss Pokenhorn always picking those rocks out and making the beans. And all the rest. But now we'd like to go to question and answer. We are recording this, and some of us are a little hard of hearing. So I'm going to ask you, as you give your question, to please speak up as loud as you can and direct it to one of our two presenters here. So does anybody, we'll start over here. Larry Bloomquist. Larry, what class are you at Westlake? 75. One of the great pictures, I believe, of Westlake football is Larry and his buddies, because he was on JV when the stadium opened. And so he was on the front cover of Westlake, or the Awesome American Statesman, laying the original sod for Westlake Stadium. So Larry, what's your question?
Skeeter, I know COVID was a tough deal for a lot of restaurateurs. How did y'all cope, and how did you survive during that time?
Excellent question. Larry asked about COVID and just the tremendous strain that it put on everybody, and especially from the restaurateurs.
Larry's my neighbor, and I really wasn't sure what kind of question he was going to ask. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. So, we have such a great team here, and it was, before COVID, I could just see that things were not going to go well with COVID. And so we started formulating a couple of weeks ahead of time. Hey guys, it looks like they're going to shut us down. We're going to be shut down. We've got to come up with a plan. And our plan is to switch to doing to go, making it as safe as possible for the customer, to where all they had to do was call in. You went out to the car. They had already given you their credit card number. They opened their trunk and put it in. But on top of that, we had these giant troughs that we put beer and stuff in for private events. We took food, and we had cooked pork ribs, we had fresh pork ribs, we had beef ribs, we had steaks, we had salmon, we had everything there on ice when people pulled up. And we created the County Line grocery store. And so the grocery store had beans, raw beans. They had toilet paper, because you go wait to HEB, that's a problem. So toilet paper, paper towels, flour, all of the things that you weren't able to get at the grocery store. And you were able to get margaritas to go. God bless them. So it worked out really well, because we had planned ahead. We had, 30 to go parking spaces. All somebody had to do was pull in, call us, and we came out, put the food in and gave it to them. And then when they allowed us to at least let people come inside the restaurant, but they wouldn't let them sit down and eat, we created a picnic pack, so you could come in and get a picnic of a little bit of everything and take that. So that really got us through. And the news channels, it was hilarious. The news would call me and they would say, hey, can we come out and can we film what you're doing at the restaurant? Which was like, oh, you can't pay for advertising like that. So, but the funny thing is, when they interviewed me, I guess they looked like I had COVID or something. So they had a broomstick with a microphone. And they're holding it out like 8 feet for me to talk. I was like, Yeah, but I did have a cow print mask on, so that worked out. So
Excellent. Anybody else who's got a question? Okay, the question is, any stories on any hard drinking governors or lieutenant governors?
oh, I do have a story about Mark White. He's not here, is he? I remember I was bussing tables and Mark White came in with his family and the baby needed its diaper changed. So he just laid the baby up on the table. You ask. And so he laid the baby up on the table and they changed the diaper, but the baby was crying. Okay, so this is the best part. He unscrews the lid on the sugar shaker, puts it in his mouth and dips it down in the sugar and sticks it in the baby's mouth. I'm sorry, that's all I got.
Scott asked what table that was.
We got rid of the sugar shakers now.
Mark's a good Baylor man. I was a little scared where that story was going. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Lodge and Kipper was running the place. He used to have pictures of all the girls that worked here on the walls, and one of them was Jane Manson.
So the story is that when Ed Kemper was running the Cedar Crest Lodge, he had pictures of all the girls that worked for him in here, including one Jane Mansfield. So who knew that she was up here on the hill? All right, who else? Yes, sir. Could you speak up just a little bit, sir?
Yeah, we would come out at the age of 14, 16, try to pick up a 6-pack of beer.
And what year was that roughly? 64. He and his buddies were trying to come out and get beer. 15, 16 years old.
Recollection was you could actually get it.
His recollection was you could actually get it from a window.
We weren't open.
That was not Skeeter's liquor license.
Woman working here that would ask for our driver's license. She'd look at it, and then she'd give me the 6-pack.
So the woman would ask for his ID and they would charge him double. So pretty good profit margin on that. And I'll bet y'all came if she'd sell it to you. Yes, sir, Trent.
After yesterday, I waited tables here, 89 to 92 time frame. And you wait tables, you're busy, you don't work too hard. You never look at faces. You go, order what you had, brisket, chicken, whatever, run around. Job was to turn tables and make, okay? And I'm really looking at these tables, these guys have nice watches. They got gold watches, and so, and back then you take a credit card and you run a machine and you like do an imprint and you slide it back and forth. And I get the card, it's a big Crenshaw card. So he's there with Tom Kite, and then you kind of go, no, that has been Crenshaw. So you didn't realize who was there. We had it on. Gabe Brewer also came one time, sat in the very back. He had won the Masters. They got to play. Once you win it, you get to play again and again and again. I think it's 85 times in a row. And then I remember Tom Landry was here. Lou Gossett Jr. was here also. He was filming it was after Officer and some of the Rodriguez guys filmed out in somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Went out there from. So
Trent was talking about some of the celebrities that he waited on in the Masters vein. Ben Crenshaw, Tom Kite, Gabe Brewer, also Lou Gossett and Tom Landry. Tom Landry might have been here with his college roommate, George McCall, who's Austin High and lived up on Spiller Lane and was a very successful insurance man and one of the better golfers in the city. So great question. I believe we had another one back here. Okay, two questions. One for Jeffrey, which is when did electricity get up here? and then one for Skeeter on the giant beef rib story. So Jeffrey, I'm going to let you know, or let you talk about the electricity, what you know.
Well, these are the kind of questions I really love, because if no one else here knows the answer, I'm just going to make something up. My answer is, I do not recall, but probably it was in the mid-30s when they started damming up the Lake Travis and building a better dam, for Lake Austin. And I think that's when the LCRA started running lines from the Lake Travis Dam down to Austin. I think that's mid-30s then.
Well, if you're around for 50 years, you got to keep coming up with something that somebody really remembers when they were here. Because when people come, you can go to a restaurant, the service is super, super important. The food is super important. Just the whole atmosphere, you want to feel like you're a part of a family. And then you want to have some fun stuff. And so I don't know if y'all have ever been here when that longhorn that hangs on the wall, he talks. And he talks. And so, but we decided, let's do something, because we're famous for the beef ribs, because in the beginning we couldn't afford pork ribs. That's why we do beef. That's why we started with beef ribs. So we had a guy create the big rib, so people could get their pictures taken with it. So that was and we used to hang those pictures on the wall. It just got so cluttered. But my favorite part is that these folks were coming in from Japan. They had translators. They didn't speak any English, and they wanted to go eat at the restaurant, the County Line. So they wanted to see the kitchen. I said, go get that big rib and put it on the pit. Oh my gosh. They were going, and they're all talking, and I'm like, and they're like, they think it's real. I'm looking at the translator. I go, let's just go with it. It's real. So yeah, it's just that's where the big rib came from. And it's always fun when family comes, or, like the frame on the patio where people have a memory they can take back on their phone or whatever. So that's why we did that.
And maybe not my favorite part of County Line, but for decades, they've been teaching us all how to speak Texan in the restaurant. And we can thank Scott Z, head of marketing, for basically coming up with that concept and helping us all learn how to speak a little bit better with their drawl. Okay, who else has a question? Scott McCullough, class of 78. 77, sorry.
It's actually just there. 70s here. I grew up right across the street. That's what there was here. There in 77. And in the early 70s, with residents, still a 2-lane road, still there. We're outside, sound travels as well. You can hear the old hidden fans coming up the road here, the driveway. You're riding up the driveway, buses up here. I don't know if they were here legally, and I doubt it up here, but they got a station up there. So I was never up this. But
yeah, okay.
So Scott McCullough was our neighbor literally across the street on Castle Ridge. And he was talking about the hippie vans, being able to hear them grinding their gears, coming up the roads and everything. Scott is notorious. Absolutely no one ever has seen more Westlake football games than Scott. We ran the numbers. He's seen about 95% of all the Westlake games that have ever been played since 1969. And he remembers all of them. And he's sitting with Dan Laney and Newt Hassan, who between the three of them is probably very close to 2,000 games that they've seen. So we've really got the elite of fans right there together. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Where do you get this quantity of beef? And how long do you cook this in?
Now we got some barbecue questions. Where do you get your beef? How long do you cook it for? And what temperature? So I'll let Skeeter handle that.
I'll give you all the information you need. I had franchisees that couldn't do it, so don't you worry about it. So we get our beef from different suppliers. We've gotten it from Brazil at times. We get it from Colorado box beef. We constantly are trying to, because we go through so much that we are constantly doing forward purchases to where we're buying like 15 truckloads when the price comes down. Clearly today is really a tough time. Beef prices, as you well know, are through the roof. So that's the question there. US Foods is one of the people that we deal with and work with. They're a great supplier. We use their money to go out and buy, $1 million worth of beef. They charge us so many pennies per pound. There's just a formula that we use that's worked for us for 50 years. How long do we cook our brisket? We'll put it on tonight, okay? And 175 degrees. That's with a total wood smoke. We use green oak. Give me to slow down so you can get this off. Listen, you can come up here and work anytime. So we put it on, so we call it cold smoking. So we buy green oak.
From where? Where do you get the?
I'm not telling you that. So no, the oak is, when we say green oak, it's just been cut down. It's fresh. It's still got the leaves on it. So it smokes. Oak is not harsh. It doesn't, mesquite and some of them have a bitter flavor. It's got a milder flavor. It smokes, it puts off a lot of smoke. So 175 overnight on the pits. Then when we come in the morning, we reload more wood in there. And then we took the temperature up to 225. Okay. And we cook that until that brisket is 190 degrees on the interior temperature. And that's you're talking about 20 plus hours that we've cooked that brisket. Yeah. And so, now my competitors like Franklin's and stuff, they don't know how to do things. So they cook everything on Monday so you can eat the same stuff on Saturday. We don't do it that way. Okay. We're cooking fresh every single day. We're making sure that we have enough for our dinner meal and enough left over just to get us started at lunch, and then the chickens are cooked fresh. I mean, that's why we've been here for 50 years. We don't cut corners. We don't cut back on the portions. We use the best ingredients, and this has been a really struggling time for me with the beef prices going where they are to have to charge the prices that we do. Because it's like, you literally, so many people I talk to, and like when I do work at the legislature to talk about our industry and things that we need to help laws that help everyone, they honestly think that the price on the menu is what's going into our pocket. And actually, the bottom line is that it's probably a 3 to 5% profit at the bottom. And so, I just saying all of that, just thank you for supporting us, honestly, because we want to make sure that your visit here is the best thing that can happen. You bring your family here, you get what you pay for, and you got something for lunch the next day. And that's important to us.
I don't know much, but I do eat a lot of barbecue. And some of the places are now either not smoking brisket or they're asking their customers not to order brisket because they cannot charge the price that they need to even break even. It's just gotten so expensive. So hopefully we can get through that. So we're going to take one more question, and then Ellen's got a couple of things to do. And then after Ellen, we can either do it informally, or if y'all want to hear some more questions, whatever, we're good to go. So yes, ma'am.
I graduated in 1990. I wanted to know more about the story about the name. How does that come out?
That's a good question.
Excellent question from the class of 1990. I remember 1990. But the question is the name, the county line. So Skeeter.
Okay, very good question. When Bruce and all the guys were getting together talking about what are we going to call this place, you got to imagine that that's happening at the last minute when we didn't have a menu. And so they said, well, we want it to be nostalgic. You've got the Benny Goodman music, the Andrews Sisters, the Chesterfield ads. We want to call it The Way We Were. And that just doesn't really work. And, so anyway, everybody had a few drinks, and thank goodness we got over that, and said, well, nobody knows where the county line is. Let's just call it the county line. That's no bullshit. We do have one restaurant in El Paso. It's called the State Line. And the people in El Paso wouldn't let us change the name because the State Line, you've got Mexico, New Mexico, and Texas all runs together right where the state line is. And so our restaurant sits 6 feet over the line in New Mexico. So you're actually parking in Texas. You park in Texas, you walk into New Mexico, you go in the restaurant, get your drink. We have a New Mexico liquor license. We operate as a New Mexico business. Nobody really knows exactly where the state line is. I've been able to hold that one down for 50 years. Okay, so anyway, but the cool part is that our liquor license we had to buy, and it had a package store piece to it, which meant we could have a liquor store. So, 15 years afterwards, I didn't know what a package store was. I asked them when I was renewing the license. I said, what's a package store? They said it's a liquor store. And I thought, well, this could be good. How much does it cost me to enact that piece of the license? They said, well, it's $200. I go, well, hell, everybody's got $200. Yeah, we'll do that. And so then I said, well, what are the requirements to, what kind of plans do I have to give you? And they said, just get a pencil out and just draw it. It has to be attached to the side of the building. This is New Mexico, okay? I said, okay, so David Jabor and Margaret from El Paso, they own Twin Liquors. I had testified for David on an issue at the Capitol, and we won. And I love them, but he owed me a favor. So I called him and I said, David, I need you to help me open one restaurant. It's going to be in New Mexico. And the key is that Texas liquor stores, and we're in the heart of El Paso in New Mexico. The key is that I can be open till midnight when Texas stores close at 9:00, 7 days a week when they're not open on Sundays in Texas. So that's why I'm doing this one liquor store. So he sits down with me and he's giving me all this information, and it was great. And he goes, well, so how big is it going to be? I said, it's going to be about 1,200 square feet. He goes, well, you're going to need a $775,000 worth of inventory. And I said, give me that pencil. And I started erasing. I said, it's 800 square feet. And so we were able to open that inventory. We narrowed it down to about 400,000, but that's been a really great piece for our business. And it's really a fun thing that we have. And so anyway, but the county line, whether you know it or not, the county line's out here. So
Was this fun or what? My first husband and I enjoyed this so much. Vanessa and Scott, can I get y'all to come over and stand the Skeeter here for just a minute? When I went into the serving area today and I saw all of the honors and awards, and that's a good one. It's all right. All of the honors and awards that y'all have received over the years, how well deserved, but from everybody in the world. But we have a little something for you today that we hope will be special because it's from your peeps. It's from the people right here. It's from Westlake. That on behalf of the Eanes History Group, we proclaim the county line on the hill with Skeeter Miller and team as a Westlake community treasure. This is in recognition of your significant contributions to the past, the present, and the future of the Eanes area. Thank you so much, and we wish you the best for another 50 years.
thank you. So can we get a picture? I want to send this to my 8th grade teacher.
Grandma,